afternoon. Hello, Jean-Francois. Welcome back.
Hey. Hi.
So welcome back to Biohacking Superhuman Performance. We are here. I'm Natalie Nidham, holistic nutritionist, epigenetic coach, and biohacking coach. Jean-Francois is the owner and founder of Canlab in beautiful Montreal that makes an amazing array of peptides. And we are here today for the second part of our series on SARMS. The first one we posted a couple of weeks ago, and we like to talk about SARMS, but we always like to talk about one other thing. So first of all, welcome, Jean-Francois. Thank you for coming back.
Oh, thanks to you.
Oh, my pleasure. So today what we're going to talk about is Thymulin, people. So that's T-H-Y-M like Mary, U like under, L-I-N, which is not to be confused with Thymulin. So we're not going to talk about Thymulin today. We've talked about it before. We'll talk about it again. Today we're just going to talk about Thymulin, and then we're going to continue on our SARMs and SARMs-like compounds. So we're going to talk about Cardarine. We're going to talk about SR9009, which is also known as stenabolic, which is actually not a SARM. And Cardarine also isn't a SARM, right?
No, it's not.
It's not a SARM. And then we are going to talk about S4, which is Andrine, which is a SARM. And we're going to talk about other compounds similar to that. So we're going to try to keep it under an hour as best as we can. We all know that our track record with that is a little dicey, but we'll do our best. So we're going to start with Thymulin, which is a thymus peptide. So it's part of that family of peptides that are derived essentially from the thymus gland. So Thymulin, thymosin alpha-1, thymosin beta-4, Thymulin, all of these peptides kind of in the world of immune support in some way, shape, or form. Yes?
That's right. You have that big thymosin family, so to say. Thymosin alpha-1, beta-4. There is a beta-10, beta-15 too. We're looking actually, I never mentioned that, into beta-10, thymosin beta-10, who specifically is angiogenesis. So, you know, because in cases of cancer, it was found that, yeah, thymosin beta-4, BPC 157 are good, actually, even if they have an angiogenesis effect.
Yeah.
But, you know, because there is more positive outcome than negative, so it outbalance. And we're not sure, actually, if angiogenesis wouldn't be a good thing to have when you have a cancer, or at least some of them. But anyway, probably will make some, so people, if they want to be on the safe side, you know, in their way of thinking, they could use it.
Well, and also I didn't mention thymosin TB500, which is a component.
Which is a fraction of thymosin beta-4.
Yeah.
And actually, thymosin TB500 doesn't refer to anything like thymosin beta-4 because it's a leg of the protein, and you know, the leg alpha, beta, and you know, and 500. It was actually a trade, a commercial name.
Right.
For the compound. So the well-known company, the first one to put it out on the market, they named it TB500. It's like calling a fridge, I don't know, but in Quebec we do that, Frigidaire, who was the main brand, and you know, we associate the brand with the product. So TB500 was actually a brand name.
Oh, so that's on your website, it's LKKTQ.
Exactly. I didn't want to name it TB500 because that's a brand name. Basically, it doesn't, and if you read the literature, you'll find very few articles referring to TB500. They will refer to the fraction, and they will somehow write something like known as TB500 because that was a commercial thing. But it scientifically, it doesn't refer to a compound like the other ones.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Well, it's segment 17 to 23, right? It's the
That's right. That's of the thymosin beta-4. sequence. So basically, Thymulin with the U, the one we just put out, I decided to put it out. It's not hard to make or anything, but because actually there was that article that came out, you know, when the virus outbreak started in China, they were giving Thymulin to patients in the
We're talking
hospital
about
to
COVID-19.
mitigate
Yeah.
the effect of the virus. So I say, oh yeah, so there might be something there.
And so tell me this, did they get, I mean, did they get positive results or what is it?
I don't know. It was some kind of half scientific publication. They didn't talk about dosages or no. They just mentioned that they were giving them that without more details. But I thought, hey, you know, if they do that.
To be clear to the people here, we're not saying that Thymulin is a treatment for COVID-19 here. Just to be clear.
No, but you know, that's what brought my attention, that those doctors in China, they are not doctors. They're doctors, not politicians, so don't hate them. You know, they were using that. That's what they had in hand to mitigate a bit like what we're trying to do here with thymosin alpha 1, basically. So I didn't know that much of the details of that peptide, but when you go into the research, it's pretty potent, and it has actually very strong anti-inflammatory effects too. So it's pretty amazing.
So let's talk about it. What is it?
No, we can't, because I just started to educate myself deeply on it. So I'm just.
Someone use it. So
I've been looking into dosages first, you know, so because at one point people will ask, and it turns out that you don't need to take much, maybe 1 to 2 milligrams, 2 milligrams being a lot per day. And there are mice studies they've done, and they're talking about micrograms to get a profound effect, that even if you convert to human dosages, it still remains micrograms, but like point something milligrams, very small dosages, to have a very profound effect. And one interesting thing, they mentioned that it's inactive in the blood. It needs to bind to zinc. So it works a bit like the GHK, actually.
With copper.
With what it does with copper. Once it's in the blood, it will find the zinc, bind to it, and become active. So pretty much the same process would happen here. But that's why if you look at the hair lasting protocol that TaylorMade came up with GHK with CU, with copper, and they use Thymulin with zinc, for the same reason, because the Thymulin on the scalp won't find zinc, so you need to provide it. But if you inject it, it will find its own zinc to bind to. And
as long as you're not deficient.
Yeah, that's the main thing. And that's what we could talk about that medicine that push the zinc inside the cells for the virus. But of course, if there is no zinc around to push in, well, it's not going to work. So you need to be sure that you're not deficient in zinc to begin with.
Let's say somebody was going to take Thymulin, which is basically, so as much as we can say today is that it's a general immune support, right?
That's right.
To some degree, those are the
a very potent one.
So it's very, so is it more of do you have a sense yet of which part of the immune system it's supporting? Like, you know,
yeah, that's the thing I didn't get into yet. We know thymosin alpha 1 modulates the immune system.
Like it balances.
Exactly. This one, nothing indicates any modulation. It just boosts.
So you have to be more careful with this.
So you have to be more careful because if you would take too much for too long, then it may bring you to the other side of not enough, of too much. So you might need to be a bit more careful with this one. But, you know, I will investigate in the next few days and all that. That's all I'm looking into right now. So, you know, probably in a few days we'll be able, I'll feed you the information and you could write one of those little
So what I'll do,
informative
yeah,
things.
yeah, I will, and I will also include the update in the intro to this video so that
There you go.
it'll be there as well. So what we know about Thymulin so far is it might be interesting for someone with an immune system that needs a bit of a lift,
That's right.
right? But you'd have to go with a light hand and not. Oh, this is not one of these peptides you're going to want to just go big and go big or go home with.
No, exactly. No, I wouldn't do that with this one.
Okay, great. So that's so that'll be coming to the website soon. The dosages might be, so would 1 to 2 milligrams a day.
What I gathered is 1 to 2 milligram should do. They mentioned in pretty much all the studies, it's dose dependent. The more you take, the more of an effect you'll get.
So maybe would it be smart for someone to start with even half, like 500 micrograms?
Exactly, and see how it goes. And usually when you do that, you can increase dosages every 5 days. 5 days is pretty much a time for the body to adjust and fully adjust to a dosage, and then you'll see what happened. Same like with melanotan, you start with small dosages, and after 5 days you can increase and don't get those that weird effect. Most compounds, 5 days steps.
Yeah.
It's a good time
do you
frame.
know anything about the half-life of Thymulin in the body? Like, does it stick around?
It's very short too.
So it's gone within a day. Like
it's not something that if something bad happened, you're going to be stuck with it for like 3 days until the compound is gone. No, it's very, very fast.
Okay, but still, definitely if somebody's going to try, experiment with this peptide in particular, you want to go with a light hand and be really mindful of.
Well, not, I don't want to scare people either. I don't think,
I just think
I wouldn't use it like thymosin alpha 1 in the sense that if you have an autoimmune situation, that don't use it.
Yeah, it's not for you.
If you don't have, and that's easy to know, if you don't have any autoimmune response or condition, then I think, yes, you could give it a try.
Okay. And why would you give it a try? Just if you...
immune system, because generally speaking, we all have everything that we do now. We talked about it, in another podcast. Everything we do depresses our immune system. The bad sleep habit, the diet, the stress, everything.
Yeah.
And again, I repeat, that's why we have so much health problem today.
Right.
One of the main cause of it is worldwide depressed immune system. So basically that's why, unless you have autoimmune bad response, and I'm saying this at this point, again, I'm not sure. I'm gonna keep digging research, and it may have a balancing effect too. I didn't see it yet. That's the only thing. So, that's kind of
okay.
Well, maybe we'll talk about it in a couple of weeks, but at this point, that's what I know about this peptide.
Okay, so it's coming soon horizon. Keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, and it's not Thymulin. It's not a bioregulator. It's not going to do nothing to make the thymus and all the, the bone marrow has to do with it.
Yeah, yeah.
White blood cell. It's not going to do nothing to make those organs healthier or better.
Which is what Thymulin does.
That's what Thymulin with an A does. Yeah. Now, the only reason we didn't come up, listen, we have about 10 grams of Thymulin with an A.
Yeah.
That we synthesized over a year ago. The only reason we put it on the market, and that's another reason. I know people selling Thymulin with an A. It's not real Thymulin. It's not. We tried even low, like 1 milligram per ml. It doesn't dissolve in water.
Really?
No. So, we would sell it like 1 milligram vials. You would put 2 ml in it. You would have that suspension, and that it doesn't even go through the needle, the insulin needle. You would need
Wow.
hypodermic syringe, and that's so that's I didn't talk about it before. People were asked because we're looking to, okay, we try with buffer to change the pH and this and that, like what we did with ARA290, and it worked with that one. We tried with Thymulin with an A. It doesn't, we couldn't find a way to solubilize it. So that's I can talk for what we do because I know. But if other companies sell it and it is real Thymulin, I really wonder how they make it soluble, because we did, and we've been looking into it for a year.
So there's no other way to take it. Like, it's not orally bioavailable because it'll get broken down.
No. Well, there is always a fraction of, like, those capsules you get, but no.
Yeah.
I'm at that point where I'm gonna write Kavinson in Russia and say, hey, what's up? How do you do it? Because I'm pretty sure they do inject it, but maybe it's binded to. There are ways you can do that. You can bind it to an albumin, or there is so many things you can do, but there is so many things you can try too. So we're not there yet.
Yeah, I think we'll see how much he's willing to share. So that's interesting on the Thymulin. Okay. All right. So leaving our immune peptide behind, now we're going to move into this world of SARMs and SARMs-like substances. So the last episode, we talked a lot about RAD140, which is a really interesting compound. It's relatively new, like it hasn't been around for a huge amount of time. It's got lots of incredible benefits. But today we're going to talk about Cardarine, and we're going to talk a little bit about why someone would use one over the other, because they have some really interesting different effects. So you were telling me before we started today that RAD140, I think, is really good for building muscle mass. Whereas, and that's in very broad terms, whereas Cardarine is more of a peptide that would help to build up endurance. Or
well, it's not a peptide,
not a peptide,
and it's not a SARMs. It's usually, because when all those internet companies, when they started to sell those compounds, they would sell them,
as
together as SARMs, and they wouldn't say it was SARMs, but they would advertise as a SARMs company, and they would sell those other compounds, but they're not SARMs. Like Cardarine, GW501516, is a PPAR delta activator.
Yeah.
So basically, it works. It activates pathways within the cells, within the mitochondria. And it's a very, very interesting compound because, well, first, it's the one that probably a lot of people have read about that gives cancer. Well, yeah, okay. It did in one of the first studies they did, where they had mice that were genetically prepared to have cancers. They gave them
1,000 times the dose?
No, it would be 1,000 if you didn't convert to human dosage. That's,
I see. Okay.
If you do convert, it's about 20 to 40 times.
Okay,
It's high. And for most of the life, they started them when they were almost, not babies, but kids. Mice, is there a name for that?
Well, maybe a few months old. Yeah.
And they give it to them their whole life. So basically, don't do that to experiment, but it would be like adopting a kid and starting to feed him drugs to see what happened.
Yeah.
So don't do
that.
Not
a good idea.
Not a good idea. But just to put it in a human frame, what happened. And of course, they didn't do that study to see if it would give you cancer, because the mice are made to get cancer.
So
they wanted to see which kind of cancers it would give you if it would, and they used dosages that they were sure that it would give cancer. But basically the idea, the study was to see, okay, which organs will be affected.
Right.
Turns out that most of them and the mice died horribly, basically, of all kinds of cancers. So, but that was one study, and based on that study, everybody freaked out. Health Canada emitted a communique, you know, don't take this, don't take that drug, you're gonna get cancer. A bit what they did with steroids 30 years ago, you know, freak out people. So, but that's because at the time, the drug was already on the WADA list,
Mm-hmm.
and they still use, instead of explaining to people the why it's not ethical to take drugs in sports, they
Right.
prefer to demonize drugs and use the health aspect and, you know, the whole thing. So they're still doing that, and that's the wrong route. And by the way, what I think what they should test at the Olympics, for example, is stop testing for drugs, because they all take it anyway. They just know how to avoid detection. Test for health markers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care if they take all kind of drugs, what they do, test for a health marker, and you only want healthy athletes to compete.
Mm-hmm.
If through drugs they have been able to maintain health, well, they did something good. And basically that's what we're doing when we biohack.
Right.
And just discard the unhealthy. Yeah, okay, they may be very performant, but they're not healthy. Discard those ones.
Right.
That would be much more in line with the spirit of the Olympics, basically. That's my little 5 cents here.
Okay, that's your little rant of the day. So Cardarine activates PPAR delta, co-activates PPARGC1A. It increases AMPK expression. It increases fatty acid metabolism, which is always a good thing. It increases, it seemed in human trials to increase protection against obesity. And here's the really interesting thing, because it makes it the flip side of the coin with RAD 140 in particular.
Yeah, but to go further on that, you know, just to finish that cancer thing, later studies showed to be at lower dosages to be cancer protective. And actually, in one study, I recall, uh, they would give it to animals who had cancer and it decreased the cancer.
You're kidding.
Yeah, it's actually, at this point, from what I've read, if I had a cancer, I would take some to fight the cancer.
How did it do that?
I don't remember.
Okay.
That's the nice way to say I don't know.
Okay, well that's interesting. That's really, because
cancer is not my specialty. So, but you know, you can dig and find out exactly in details how it works. But it turns out that it is, at least that's for sure, cancer protective through its pathways.
At appropriate dosage.
And that makes sense, because that's not a peptide, which is very targeted. It's a more broad, it's a drug. So it works through different pathways, and pathways are regulated by enzymes.
Yeah.
And enzymes have a limit in their capacity.
Right.
So you may, I explained that before, probably in another podcast with somebody else, where, okay, at low dosages, you didn't reach the ceiling of enzymes activities.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the anti-cancer pathways is stronger than the pro-cancer. So it becomes net effect, it's anti-cancer. If you increase the dosages, at one point you're going to hit the ceiling of the enzymatic activity. And if by bad luck, the pro-cancer ceiling is higher than the anti-cancer at higher dosages, then it becomes pro-cancer.
Right.
So, you know, it's all the trick, it's all there in the dosages. And the point is that at lower dosages, it shows anti-cancer activities. And not one mice, not one human got cancer from taking low dosages of Cardarine.
Okay.
And it has been because it was banned by WADA I'm not sure if it's 2007 or 2013, but let's make it 2013. That means that 7 years ago, that means in 2013, it was widely spread enough
Hmm.
and used for WADA to ban it. So it has been used for many years before.
Right. Right.
So you can imagine easily by now that hundreds of thousands of people have used it, and not one case of cancer came out due to the use of that compound. We would know about it. If one person had cancer because of that, you say, hey, I got cancer because of that. Nothing, not in the literature, not in the biohacking world, nowhere.
Okay.
It didn't give cancer to nobody, and we're talking, looking back, at least 15 years. So
Okay. So appropriate dosages. Um, cool. So in terms, but what I was going to say, where I was going before we finished our cancer, is that the interesting thing is its effect on cholesterol, which seems to be the reverse of, so one of the downsides of RAD 140 is for some people, or maybe for most people, it can raise your LDL and have a suppressing effect on HDL, which is the reverse of what you want. Whereas cardarine seems to do this, the opposite.
the opposite. So it
So it
could be a
increases
nice
HDL.
compound to use to mitigate that effect and get the benefit of the compound. It doesn't actually. It does raise the use of uh, lipids, but actually, what it does, it makes your mitochondria prefer
Fatty acid.
fatty acids over glucose, and you'll notice that effect when you take the compound on the ketogenic diet. It
I was going
works
to
even it
say,
works even
yeah,
better because it makes that whole process go
would it
easier.
make it easier for people to get into ketosis on a ketogenic diet? You know how that,
It helps, yeah,
yeah, that transition can be really hard for
yeah,
people sometimes.
exactly. So it could help, and it increases angiogenesis in the muscles, not
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah.
So for people who know about a bit about VO2 max,
Hmm.
one component of VO2 max, it's an increase in vascularization of the muscle. So in that aspect, yes, you could sit on your couch, take GW, and after a few weeks, you would have increased your VO2 max by a few points.
Really?
Just like that. Not much, but so if you do exercise and everything, you will see an increase in your VO2 max. Uh, And yes, for the blood lipid regularization, it would be an amazing, it is a good compound to use to balance, mitigates the RAD 140 effect on the blood lipids. There is another effect that very few people know, and that could explain too, and that why it promotes cancers at higher dosages. There is one study that shows that as you increase the dose, not at lower dosages, but as you increase the dose, there is one point where it becomes mitochondrial uncoupler.
Oh,
So we're gonna, what is that, right?
yeah,
Okay, in the internal mitochondrial wall, on one side, you have the Krebs cycle,
yeah,
where you make ATP.
yeah,
On the other side of the wall, you have your substrates. You have glucose and fatty acids. So as the glucose and fatty acids are broken down, they release energy.
yeah,
That energy is transferred through the wall, through a pH gradient,
yeah.
to the other side, and is picked up by the Krebs cycle
Right.
and is used to make ATP.
Yeah.
So there you go. So mitochondrial uncoupling is you uncouple that activity, meaning that the energy is not transferred to the other side.
It gets stuck on the other side.
Okay, good. For those who know, DNP, dinitrophenol, the
Yeah.
fat burning agent, is an amazingly strong
Uncovered.
uncoupler. That's how it works, basically. And that's why when you take DNP, you sweat all the time, you're hot, because that energy that is not transferred to the Krebs cycle, it has to go somewhere. So it's liberated in the form of heat. But if you take too much, then you die because you don't make ATP enough. So that's why you have to be careful. You would have to take ridiculous amount of GW to have that happen. I don't think it could be done. It's not as direct as DNP, but
Okay,
it
so
has that activity at the and the DNP was suspected to give cancer. So then you could see the relation. You take too high dosages, that could be the mechanism too. I'm just thinking now that initiate cancers in the tissues. Now because I started to investigate that because, you know, a few years ago, people were taking GW and they say it makes me, because one of the effect is, oh, by the way, we uncouple naturally. It's a way we have to adjust. So let's say it's Christmas Eve, you eat way too much, maybe 8,000 calories. The next day, you won't gain the equivalent in fat of the extra calories. Why? Because your body naturally will start to uncouple more to dissipate some of those calories. And that's why one of the reason we say, you know, calories are not all equals.
yeah.
Because there are other mechanisms implied that makes adjustment internally. So that's why the next day you won't gain the equivalent in fat. You will be sluggish all day, and probably you'll be hot because you increase the uncoupling. So basically it does that. And so mostly athletes, actually, they say, look, it does the reverse of what I'm supposed to be full of energy. And I'm sleeping all the time, sluggish, and except when they train. When they train, it would be amazing. The other 23 hours, they would be sleepy. So I started, and I didn't understand why it would do that. I started to dig, and it's actually one of the main research paper on the compound, but just a couple of lines where they mention that effect. And it turns out that it's very individual, meaning that there are people, they can take 20 milligrams a day and they won't get that effect. Other people I've seen, they take 5 milligrams a day and they become sluggish. So you really have to tweak to see where is that
threshold.
Threshold for you. You know, I couldn't tell you it happened at that many. No, it varies a lot from one person to the next.
So in terms of a rough range for people that because we talk about too much could give you cancer, and so really the ranges you're working with is somewhere between 5 to 20 milligrams a day.
Okay, yes.
Something like that? Something
like that. But again, it depends why. You know, most of the crowd that are listening to this podcast, they're not into high performance sports, and athletes have a tendency to take way too much. You know, and that's one of the problem on the internet. All the dosage, you know, if you start to do a search on the compound, all the websites, they will all give you dosages derivated from athletic performance, not anti-aging or anything like that. It makes it a very good anti-aging compound, but you don't need to take what a guy would use to go compete at the national level. You know, you're not there.
For sure.
I don't want to pop your bubble, but you're not there.
So that, and I think
that's why 5 milligrams, it's a very potent compound. 5 milligrams, it's an amazingly good anti-aging, health beneficial dosage to take.
Okay.
If you're, let's say, a really big person, maybe 10 as an extreme, but you know, 20 milligrams, I've seen a lot, but with like competitive athletes or you know, people like that, they spend like 15 hours a week in the gym and this and that. You know, not 5. I would start with 5 and probably stick with 5. When I do use it, I take 5 a day, and that's it. I'm very happy with that.
And do you take it 7 days a week, or do you go 5 and 2?
No, 7 days a week. Yeah.
Okay. And so a cycle would be like 2 to 3 months kind of thing?
Yeah, if you're into cycling it, you could do it for 3 months and stop between 1 to 3 months.
Yeah. You might do a cycle of Rad 40 maybe if you wanted to.
At this point, both, I think both approach would be good. Alternate compounds or
Yeah.
take at the same time.
Okay.
It's really up to you, basically.
And play with it. Okay. And then the other thing I've read about Cardarine, and I'm looking forward to giving it a try at some point, is to make sure that you, if you're going to source Cardarine, to source it as a tincture. First of all, to make sure that you're only getting Cardarine, you're not getting a pill with all but a whole bunch of other stuff in it. And then the other thing being that, and I don't know if you found this, that you want to shoot it straight into your mouth, because I know with other compounds, they'll stick to the glass. And so even though they taste a little bit intense, let's say, you basically would take it directly into the mouth and then chase it down with some water or something.
There you go. Yeah, that would be the better approach. Yeah.
As opposed to trying to mix it in a glass, because it might, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, some people, they would like drop the content in a glass, but yes, you would have, because of different liquid, most of them, they don't agree with water. So, you know, the water will push them sideways thick, and then you get a big mess in your glass, and you're missing part of the dosage.
Okay. All right, so that's Cardarine and Rad 140. So Rad 140, in general terms, more of a muscle building. Cardarine, more effects on the endurance side, but still gives the fat burning, and you know, it still gives all those good metabolic effects. You're still going to get.
Yeah,
it's not like
you know, Cardarine, it was mislabeled as a fat burner, but it's not. It is, and it's not. It's not. Okay, what an actual fat burner, a compound that you'll take that will burn fat, and I mean, you're sitting down on your couch and you watch TV and you will burn more fat.
Yeah.
Caffeine, ephedrine,
yeah.
cocaine. Don't do that.
Nothing that's good. That's going to be good for you. Yes.
You know, that those are fat burners.
Right. They're actually thermogenic.
What I like to call Cardarine and SR9009, they're not fat burner per se. They're metabolic optimizer.
Okay.
So if your mitochondria function better, it's gonna, what you will do to lose fat will work better. And yes, you will burn more fat, but it won't be a direct effect. It will be an indirect effect, because you optimize the metabolism, make your metabolism favor fatty acid, and the mitochondria works better at what it does. Then the end results would be fat burning, yes, but it's not going to be direct effect. So if you take it and sit on your couch, no, it's not. Sorry, that's not a magic pill yet.
Well, no, that's, I mean, and I think it's good for people to, you know, it's going to help you to help yourself, but it's not going to do the work for you, is the bottom line.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So that's our Cardarine. Our next contestant is also not a SARM. It's SR9009. It goes as stenobolic. Is the name, right?
That's a funny one.
Yeah, it also impacts mitochondria and muscles.
Yeah, it does the same as Cardarine, but it starts more downstream of the metabolic pathways. And by doing so, it becomes a very strong, for example, it activates the expression of CRT1 gene. So it
nice, anti-aging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it increases MPK and other things. So, but I say it's a funny compound because, you know, in research, sometimes they will test a product. It's called proof of concept. Mm-hmm. So they'll take a compound and just throw it in vitro and see what it does, if it works. And that was the case with SR9009. They just, you know, it was actually a
in
rough.
Vitro? Like, you mean in a test tube or in vivo?
In a test tube.
Okay.
So they threw some inside the dish and see if it does what they hope it would, and it did. But it was a proof of concept. They wanted to show that that kind of activator would have those effects. But they never intended to make a drug out of it. It was the base for the concept, so new drugs would be developed. But what happened is, and that's what you have in the sport community, competitive, they don't care. They say, oh, it works. And so they started to use it. And yes, it works, but it's a very crude compound. It's like probably in a few years, they'll come up. In that case, yes, with a better version, that will be orally absorbable. That's why you have to take much higher dosage when you take it orally than GW, because it has a very poor oral absorption. Some
transdermal, because
we make it transdermal for that reason. But if you take it orally, you're gonna need to take a lot more, and the problem is going to be much more expensive because you need to take more. Transdermal, you need to take much less because you get like 98% plus absorption. So that's why, they didn't care if it was absorbable or not. That was not the idea why they did that study. And that's why you won't find many studies on that compound, because that was not the point. They didn't want to prove it worked and then do more studies to push it. No, they just wanted to prove the concept of that pathways of activation, and now they know it works. They can work on other compounds that probably will come out eventually soon. But meanwhile, it does what it does. If it's well absorbed, it's a great compound to use too, but keep that in mind.
And doesn't it, because in the research I've done, the digging I've done around it, I've come across stuff that talks about how it improves also plasma triglycerides.
Yeah, the same as GW, because downstream it activates all the same pathways as GW. Okay. So you should expect the same results.
But what I've read is that it has a very short half-life.
Yeah, because after that they did studies on mice, to see, okay, maybe it will work in mice. First, the only way they could give it to mice was intraperitoneal injection, in the belly, but inside the belly, like a deep, in between internal organs. That's what's intraperitoneal.
Intraperitoneal, yeah.
So they would be sure of a full absorption, and but that's how they showed. And they showed orally. In mice, it's only absorbed by 2.3%.
Oh wow!
And very short action. But again, that we talked about the the action was like an hour or so. So that's another compound. Like GW, it's all day long. SR9009, its half-life is like 1 hour.
Yeah, so you have to
dose it many times a day. If you were to use it for sport performance, again, if you use it for anti-aging, once a day is enough. Just you trigger those pathways, it kicks in for a few hours.
And you're good.
And you're good. So once a day, you do it transdermal in the morning, maybe 3-4 milligrams, and bang, you're set. That's why, again, dosage wise, be careful. Don't follow what people use it for performance. That's totally different.
Okay. So we're looking for performance for life as opposed to performance for sport.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, great. So that's SR9009, which is anabolic. The last one we're going to talk about today is actually an actual SARM, so selective androgen receptor modulator, and that was the S4 Andrine.
That's another funny one in the bad way.
So this is
that's when I started the company, we didn't offer this one for one reason. It has too much side effects.
Okay, let's talk about
not that many, but Side effects I really didn't like. For most people, it will shut down your night vision, and during the daytime, your vision will be yellowish. You're gonna see everything with a tint of yellow.
So how is this a
So me, without investigating, I say, well, that's not too good. You know, I don't like that. So no, I don't want to know anything about this one. In terms of anabolic to androgenic ratio, it's about the same as Ostarine. So there is no extra advantage. Plus, you need to take, okay, about 2 to 3 times more total daily dosage to get the same effect as Ostarine. So
why would anybody use this?
because subjectively they feel less water retention, and it makes sense because of its very short time action. So you know
That's more of a bodybuilding thing, right? When you're cutting.
it's more of a bodybuilding. I
Yeah.
never saw any advantage using it, and now you have, and I see on in your group, I think, and a couple of other group people asking about other like LGD. There is now the 3303, and there is one, it's a something 105. And listen, when the race for SARM started, all the main companies, pharmaceutical companies, did their own research on their own compounds. And the research is there to read. And they all dated from the same time, you know, 90s, beginning of the 2000s. And what me, I see it more like a commercial twist. Okay, let's say me, I sell the main ones. I sell RAD, I sell Astarine, I sell all that, and everybody's happy. Now the next guy, he sells the same. He wants to have an advantage on me, commercial advantage. He found out about the LGD 3303. That is not much better than the 4033, but he has an advantage. Is selling something that I don't, and of course is gonna push it as the new one. It's not new, it's from the same time, just nobody used it before because it's not that good actually.
Yeah,
So that's why nobody used it, you know. But now after so many years, people, they forgot that it wasn't that good. So you know, and then it's all a commercial thing. Listen, if it didn't go mainstream at the beginning, there is a reason. Not that people didn't know about it. You know, all those guys looking for the best compound, you know, they tried them all. And if the one, and I'm talking gray market, they settle for those 3 or 4, there is a reason that they're pretty much the best we know of right now. So they're not new. They're from the same time of research, but from different companies. That's all.
all right. Well, so then so certainly in this case, we've talked about far more interesting compounds that have less downsides, like not having you see yellow during the day.
Yeah, no, that to me, that's a red
It's
flag.
a bit of a deal breaker. I mean, if it's going to change your vision and mess up your night vision,
Yeah.
that's good.
No, the to big, and it's almost right away. You start using it, and within a few days, you get that big red flag for me. And little parenthesis. That's why too. You know, as a company, we're asked many times, why don't you make this compound or that compound? And mostly it's with the growth hormone secretagogues.
Yeah.
So why don't you make GHRP6 or GHRP2? When I started the company, with the exception of SARMS, because that's what was selling the most, and you know we could capitalize with that, so we could invest in peptides.
Well, you
But
were
peptide wise, why we don't make everything? Because I we try to make what in the category of peptide I believe is the one best one. So for me, ipamorelin is the best. Without all the advantage, without the, so why make the other ones if they're not as good? And maybe a few people, for some reason, they still want, but you know, it is a business. You know, we want, you know, I got caught with that at the beginning. You know, I had a friend, even with SARMS, we were making only RAD 140, but you know, a friend of mine, he said, oh, can you, LGD, you know, because he read that it was great, you know, so I bought, because this one we source, but in the US, the raw material, and to make like 100 bottles. So my friend bought 4 bottles, and then I was stuck with 96 bottles for 6 months. So, you know, sometimes if we don't make it for you specifically, there is a reason, because there is a minimal peptides to synthesize. We won't synthesize 10 milligrams. We will, minimum it's 1 gram.
For sure.
So we will not synthesize 1 gram of a peptide so 1 or 2 person can have their compound for whatever reason and then be stuck with all the rest, and nobody's going to buy it because they know it's not that good. We're open, and we have done it a couple of times. Yes, you want it, we'll make you a gram. You buy the whole gram, and yeah, fair enough, no problem. But there is practical technicalities. It takes the same time to synthesize 10, 20 milligram as 1 gram. So if it takes us 2 weeks to synthesize 20 milligrams, well, it's 2 weeks we're not making thymosin beta-4 or BPC or any new compounds, and then we push, you know, it's, we have to take that in consideration.
Well, you're running a business, and also with the GHRPs, you're also making a call that says, we're going to choose to produce a compound that has benefits, and we're going to choose not to produce the compound that frankly has some very real downsides. Like it's going to boost cortisol, prolactin, it's going to boost appetites. It's just not going to give them the results they're looking for. So why go?
And the aim of my company, and it still is, now we shifted part of it, but at the beginning it was my only goal was anti-aging and health improvement.
Yeah.
Now, because of well, many reasons, we got into the therapeutic aspect of you know, LL37, therapeutic, well, ARA, well, it's always a funny mixture, but we're doing some like purely therapeutic peptides because there is a need, there is a demand, and
they can help people.
more and more it turns out that we're the only one making them. Like ARA 290, I think, has been the first, beside TaylorMade, to release it. The KCF 18, we're the only one so far who sells it. So, you know, we're going that way because there is a demand and it's not fulfilled by those other companies because they don't care. They go for the big money, and, you know, GHRP2, because in the bodybuilding world, they want it because it increases appetite and they want that. But I don't see the point with the clientele I'm looking for, so we're not making it.
Awesome. Okay, well, this is good. I'm not sure that, I think we made it under an hour. We'll know for sure when we stop recording. But that's it for today. I think that was our agenda. We got through everything. If we will report back to people. So by the time you're listening to this, you'll probably have read something more about Thymulin in the introduction to the video. And that's about it. People can find you at canlab.net is your website. They can email info@canlab.com. You can reach me .net, sorry. You can reach me on the Biohacking Superhuman Performance Group on Facebook. Both Jean-Francois and I, in different arenas, offer consults for people, and or if we can, in the group. Jean-Francois is very generous with his time in our group. Usually when I run into trouble, he's there to parachute in and rescue beast. So we do our best to help as many people as we can through the group. But if you need specialized and personalized attention, then definitely you may have to book a time with Jean-Francois or me, depending on, you know, usually if it's something I can't handle, I'm pushing it over to you, Jean-Francois. Anyway, so that's it. So thank you again so much for your time today, Jean-Francois. It was a pleasure as always.
Very welcome.
And we'll see you again soon.
Goodbye.
Thank you.